Thank you for joining us for the fifth webinar series that we have held on hydrogen, investing in hydrogen. So my name is Thomas Briault from Arup, and I will be moderating this session. We have collated a panel of experts, all of whom have a different view on investing in hydrogen and will bring their individual perspectives to that. We have, over the last few years, been discussing at the Hydrogen Committee, which the IPPF hold monthly. Please get in touch with the IPPF if you would like to join that committee. We've been talking about how in recent years hydrogen has had a lot of early movement. Projects have developed through concept design, but not many have got past financial investment decision. And even less of the hyperscale projects have reached FID, if any. So we have collated a panel who perhaps have a perspective on some of that. Firstly, we'll hear from PAC Alloysius, Joko, Purwanto, energy economist for the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, who'll tell us a little bit about the opportunities for investment as he sees it. We'll then hear from Alderman, Executive Manager, Project Execution Asia Pacific for HIF Global, who can tell us a little bit on how they're approaching getting towards FID and beyond on their projects. And then Wen-bian, Vice President of Clean Energy Hydrogen at APAC-Linde, can tell us a little bit about how their projects are moving forward and how they're seeing projects resulting in equipment orders and concrete activity in the market. And then finally, Robert G will round things off with how people are taking these projects through the investment process and into delivery, and what needs to be done going forward to see more of that investment. So an excellent panel of esteemed experts, I'm sure you'll agree. So without further ado, perhaps I can ask PAC Alloysius to introduce himself and give a short introduction of the opportunities.
Hello, good morning all. And yeah, thank you, Thomas Briault, for introducing me and for inviting me to this workshops and discussion. My name is Alloysius Joko Purwanto. You can call me Joko. I'm an energy researcher and economist from the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. We are an economic think tank based in Jakarta, and we are an international organization funded in 2008, and we are supported by the 16 East Asia Summit countries. And in this occasion, I would like to briefly, I would like to take an extract for our latest report on our research activity on hydrogen use in energy sectors in ASEAN. Please allow me to share the screen. Okay, I hope you all can see this now. Yes, so I guess we all know that hydrogen has become very hype in the world, not only like in the Western world, but also in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN. ASEAN countries, let's say, would like to also take part in this hydrogen bandwagon, and with all of its natural resources potential, ASEAN countries wouldn't like to get back in this kind of development and would like to be among the front runner, in fact, in this hydrogen economy development. And as we can see here, for example, in Sarawak, there is one hydrogen plant based or generated from the hydropower electricity that now are fed to the public buses that runs into regular services in Kuching. And in Indonesia, recently we have had 2 hydrogen refueling stations developed and installed in western part of Jakarta, in Dharmogot, and also in Senayan, very close to our office area. And those are built by PLN, utility state-owned enterprise in Indonesia, and they take the hydrogen that have been produced from the green electricity, such as the geothermal and solar power electricity. And we know that ASEAN has not only started with this kind of hydrogen production plants or pilot project, or also like the end users like this refueling station, but some projects also are taking place in the aspect of supply chain. For example, we know that in Sungai Liat in Brunei Darussalam, they are building a hydrogen plant from natural gas and then export it in methyl cyclohexane to Japan with the help of Japanese companies. So I guess the question is now, as we talk about the hydrogen, then we talk about this end users, which is our transportation and their power generation in co-firing with natural gas. But who will be the really first takers of hydrogen? So I would like to take you a little bit to see what happened in the industry sectors. In fact, we know that hydrogen has been used from several decades as feedstock in the industry sectors. And in the world, in fact, like 75% of hydrogen use was in the industry sector, with 1/3 of it in oil refining. In ASEAN, currently it is almost 100% of the hydrogen use was used in the ammonia production, oil refining, chemical industry, methanol, as well as steel industry. And to the world situation in ASEAN, it is like 1/3 of the like half of the activity, half of the hydrogen used as feedstock in ammonia production to produce fertilizers, and 1/3 in oil refining. And 85% of this hydrogen used in the industry sector in ASEAN was supplied by captive on-site production, like 85%. And we see that it grows from 2015, like about 3.2 million tons per annum, up to 3.7 million tons per annum by 2021. And the question is that if this hydrogen that are used in industry sector, which are currently taking the gray color or high intensity of carbon, can we change this into a much more greener in the future? So in our study, we do some data collection, also some interviews and analysis and simulation, and we produce one particular scenario where ASEAN member states will be able to meet their net zero emission targets by mid of the century, and this will increase considerably the need for hydrogen. For example, by 2050, in our baseline or reference scenario, the use of hydrogen or the demand for hydrogen in those industry sector will increase from 8.2 million tons to 11.7 million tons per annum. So more than 40% of increase. And we hope that this change will happen in all sectors. For example, in oil refining, there will be kind of two forces, like to produce better quality of fuel, but at the same time, there will be less demand for hydrogen because of the electrification of mobility. In ammonia and in methanol, we'll see a big increase due to the production of e-fuels like e-methanol and also ammonia fuels. And this kind of changes, of course, doesn't only mean that hydrogen will be in terms of quantity will be increased, but also in terms of quality, in terms of carbon intensity, will be much more reduced. But how this thing can happen? Of course, we see that there will be two kind of, again, forces. First is industry that will support the development of green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, and the other that will block or will hamper the development of low carbon hydrogen. For example, IPP, electricity utilities company, they will be incentivized to build a big-scale renewable electricity like a giga scale to produce, of course, low-carbon hydrogen. And then infrastructure providers will be needed to build a pipeline, storage facilities, a harbor or hydrogen port, and oil companies like a Pertamina or Petronas or PTT would be stimulated to invest in carbon capture technologies, and that is what are happening now in Indonesia. But of course, some sectors will also against this kind of development, such as natural gas companies may sell less methane. Oil companies will sell lower volume of refined products, especially for transport, and there will be a cost increase for fertilizer, ammonia, and metal producers due to this low intensity hydrogen that will increase the costs, and shipping and transport companies also may face higher costs. The key that we see is that to optimize horizontal and vertical cooperation. Horizontal means cooperation between countries with international organizations or big multinational companies, while vertical means the part of horizontal like countries or association of countries international with companies that work in the field. So in basically ASEAN government, for example, should leverage on their financial strong national oil, gas, and fertilizers and state-controlled power sector. And then they need to build one coherent green hydrogen for industry transition task force that include all sectors in the horizontal and vertical sense. And then we need to have kind of financing alternative, especially for ammonia, methanol, steel, and gas companies. And at the end, CCS will be and CCUS will be very important, because we see that the transition between now gray to green hydrogen will not be possible in the region where oil and gas will be still making a quite share in the economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, some really interesting challenges there, and I guess it all comes down to price and those first off-takers. Perhaps I'd like now to ask Adam Alderman of HIF to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about how you're managing some of those challenges in HIF. So over to you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Let me see if I can share my presentation without sharing the notes. That's the next challenge, because I'm used to Teams. Okay, so well, hi everyone. Thank you to IPPF and also John Pemberton for inviting me to speak today. I want to introduce my company, HIF Global. HIF stands for Highly Innovative Fuels, and our mission is to fuel the world with renewable energy. I'd like to talk about what we see as some of the key challenges with getting green hydrogen projects sanctioned, and HIF's approach to developing green hydrogen-based projects and getting that hydrogen to market in the form of e-fuels. We see 4 key challenges to delivering green hydrogen to market: moving high capacity factor renewable energy from where it's located to where it's needed. A large developed market for green hydrogen does not currently exist. 3, projects are capital intensive, so scale is needed to drive unit cost down. 4, current market rules are too complex and are too regional. At HIF Global, our approach is to develop large green-scale hydrogen projects in regions with abundant renewable energy resources and combine the green hydrogen with recycled CO2 to make e-fuels, which can be used in existing infrastructure with no modifications. We're currently developing green hydrogen projects in the United States, Latin America, and Australia, and in all cases, we're using green hydrogen to make e-methanol, e-gasoline, and e-SAF, synthetic aviation fuel. This is a picture of our Haruani demonstration facility in southern Chile near Punta Arenas. So at our demonstration plant, we targeted the highest capacity factor wind resource in the world. In operation since December 22, the plant is running at greater than 75% capacity factor on one wind turbine alone. In the US, we're increasing our capacity factor by combining wind and solar and have extra security from the existing grid that currently runs 80 gigawatts of power. And in Uruguay and Australia, we're accessing a 100% renewable grid. So this slide just shows a flow schematic of our production process. At HIF e-fuel, at all HIF e-fuel facilities, we will produce AA grade e-methanol with the option to further synthesize into e-gasoline or synthetic aviation fuel. E-fuels have an 80% reduction, greater than 80% reduction in carbon intensity compared to fossil fuels. E-fuels are drop-in ready. They can be used in existing engines to replace fossil fuels now. And e-fuels are also easy to transport with no cryogenics. In terms of addressable market, where e-fuels compete with other advanced fuels, such as non-edible feedstock biofuels, we see demand being progressively underpinned by regulatory mandates and voluntary commitments. So it is important that mandates and regulations are clear and easy to navigate in order to attract project investment. So you can see on the slide that even with the minimum floor served by e-fuels, there's still quite a large demand we project by 2030. This chart shows how complex policy making is becoming and that simplicity really is the best incentive. For example, for fuels produced outside of Europe, RFNBO rules, that's for fuels of non-biological origin. They add significant cost with zero improvement to the carbon intensity score of the product. So we believe project sponsors and investors need a global standard that is based on simple carbon accounting that is technology agnostic. These are just a couple of slides of wind and solar maps globally to illustrate that renewable energy exists around the globe, far from population centers, yet policy is developing regionally rather than globally. So for hydrogen projects to move around the world, policy has to be global, simple, and certain for project sponsors and investors to finance. Projects need cash flow certainty, so regulation must support long-term contracts. Projects cannot be subject to short-term change. And projects in development need grandfathering as we learn and improve. In conclusion, if you don't believe anything I've said, I'll leave you with this photo of a Porsche 911 driven by racing driver Romain Dumas, breaking the record for the highest altitude a car has ever driven on the world's highest volcano, Hoyos del Salado in Chile, to 6,734 meters above sea level, using green hydrogen-based gasoline produced at HIF's Haruani demonstration facility in southern Chile, where the wind is blowing all the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Some very interesting technology interventions, and I'll be interested. I've already got a load of questions in my mind, but before we go there, I'll be interested to hear from how Linde are tackling these problems and how we overcome some of the investment challenges. So over to you, Wen-bian, whether if you could give a short introduction to yourself and then perhaps go with some opening remarks.
Sure. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Just to print that email. Yeah. And just about a few words about myself. Yes, myself, Wen-bian Qian, based in Singapore. Take care of Linde PLC, the hydrogen investment across APAC since last 4 years. Actually, my career has been more or less associated with hydrogen or these molecules. It's amazingly that actually Linde is not part of power business. I know that this forum is mainly for power, but amazingly due to the energy transition is bring all the different industries together. And this shows the complexity and of this important topic. And before I come to slides, I think it's fundamental. There's certain, because there's a lot of realism in the industries, and provided we are convinced that the climate change is really a serious topic, and we are convinced that there's any transition has to happen, decarbonization has to be there. Then it's going to be very important that hydrogen is going to play a role. So that is really very big, how to say, what the industry is realizing, right? Okay, I think today we are not going to talk about also a lot of topics which our panel colleagues have been highlighting here, and important to share from industry, particularly from Linde, and quite a lot of cases which I share with you. I don't want to highlight how good we are, but I think this kind of learnings, we have a lot of learnings which is going to be beneficial to the industries. Right. So this is about my company, where I'm coming from. This Linde is quite a big company, has a market cap 200 billion with more than 65,000 people, and you have the gas business and engineering business, all mainly the chemical, petrochemical, electronics, and a lot of they produce a lot of industrial gases. Actually, hydrogen is part of it. I'm coming to it. And Linde clearly they have a clear this roadmap to manage its carbon, and every company has this mission. And here for us to decarbonize, of course, that not only about decarbonize, but also we have grow. Therefore, you look at left, you will see that on the one hand, every industry say that I'm going to reduce carbon footprint, but on the other hand, we need to grow. So how to reconcile the needs? Therefore, but for Linde's two pillars is the existing business we have to decarbonize. Another thing that a lot of focus, strategic pillars is really to develop low clean hydrogen. We call low carbon hydrogen business. Through the right side, you will see that how to manage carbon, blue hydrogen and green hydrogen. There are a lot of discussion about this too. But Linde, we are looking more. We believe that both blue and green will play a role in this energy transition process. Right. So this is really about for what is about Linde's hydrogen portfolio today. Actually, Linde is not new in this business, and today's hydrogen molecule sales are already about $3 billion. And left side is the production. I mean, more than 98% of the hydrogen molecules are more than 8,000 tons per day. To put it this way, easier to visualize is that for the best natural gas based on hydrocarbon, right? We also produce ammonia. We have technology for the carbon capture. Today, we already have more than, I think today's not only 80 electrolyzers, more than 100 electrolyzers, because one by one is on the stream, right? Then more about no development, liquefaction. Linde is largest liquefaction technology provider, even the producer, right? We have hydrogen trailers, pipeline, which is about infrastructure, which is essential, for this for hydrogen as energy to be transported. Mobility, we also provide almost 20%, 30% for the global market share for the hydrogen fueling stations. Then interesting about underground storage, I'm coming to it. So this is just an example, because everybody talk energy. I think one of the important pathways is about ammonia, right? Because ammonia can be transported easily, and because today's already been transported more than close to 20 million, right? From different from geography to geography, by ships, by tankers, and so actually in this value chain, what our company is doing is that really on the production side, based upon renewable power. This is based on the green ammonia, but renewable power. Renewable power need to produce nitrogen, then with green hydrogen from the renewable power itself, then we synthesize into ammonia. This ammonia can be stored, shipped, and also green hydrogen for us, important part of the green hydrogen liquefaction in the future, right? We're not happy in the next 5 to 10 years commercially, but we believe that is going to play an important role for the liquid hydrogen to be traded, to be transported. And on the right side, also very important, not only on the production side, on the supply side, but also for the receiving end, customer side, because when people need pure hydrogen, how is it to be transported? Ammonia is going to be an important way. Crack ammonia back to the hydrogen for industrial application, also another important consideration. Okay, now I come to one about the some cases. Maybe each case I'll just share very briefly about the learnings. This project is in Germany, 24 megawatts, green hydrogen production based on PEM electrolyzers. On the lower side, you will see all the packages, and very compact. The plant, very beautiful, and based upon this, on the green power, and then produce hydrogen. But of course, this green power currently is based on certificate, and this green hydrogen is could be pumped into the industrial hydrogen network for industry customers, for mobility, and also for the liquefaction for even for the ferry on the lower end. You see ferries for based on liquid hydrogen, right? Actually, the projects already is on the commissioning phase. The learning about this project is really that people talk about PEM, but electrolyze and alkaline. But to be honest, this all the PEM, all this technology still the technology under development is not really that mature as industry anticipates. We believe there's going to be journey in terms of efficiency, in terms of reliability, and all these elements. I mean, I can entertain more questions if you have. And this is another green project in North America, is 35 megawatts. Is based upon this also PEM electrolyzers, and this space for mobility and also for liquid hydrogen market, because over there we have liquefier. All this business case obviously is based upon the government support. I have contributed to it, and also particularly in that market, this mobility is more advanced, right? This project could be on stream in 2024. Actually, in all this project, of course, it's still under construction. The learning is that every business case in the beginning could be very beautiful, but due to the last 1 or 2 years, everybody anticipates this inflation, the push up capex, and also a lot of other elements with respect to technology, right? So therefore, in this execution phase, we see a lot of learnings over there, right? So even the project not small, but in the business case development, project development phase, we should underestimate all the complexities. It is small but complex. And this is a project just on stream in Singapore. Amazingly, Singapore, even we are implementing is this green hydrogen project. This is to support using this hydrogen to support our customer Evonik, but also using the green molecules to supply for the electronics business, which with very high purity requirements. It's based on 2 times 4.5 megawatts. This alkaline electrolyzers from Chinese OEMs, and it is going to be the hydrogen molecules be integrated other pipeline. But actually, we have learnings. A lot of people talk about Chinese OEMs, which is cheap, absolutely. But when you try to move the technology from one geography to another geography, we look at different standards. We look at construction environment permits, and also understand international standards of stuff. So all these complexities, we have already come across to it, and we need to harmonize a lot of things. Yeah. And also important that when we build up a business case, we need to consider it as a hub, as a multiple application, not just a single one, because commercial case does not exist without huge government support because the cost is high. And this is a CCUS. Why I highlight CCUS? CCUS because it's connected to the blue hydrogen. This CCUS is enabler for the blue hydrogen. So this is just a little bit of project in North America, in Europe, Middle East. We are developing with multiple partnerships. This is quite interesting. The Gulf Coast. This is a hydrogen network. We have more than 2,000 tons per day of hydrogen produced in the pipe grid connected. On the right side, very interesting about storage. This is 6,000 tons of storage. Currently, the industry's biggest learning is really how to transport, how to store hydrogen, right? So in the future, we anticipate storage much, much bigger due to renewable power, the nature, intermittent nature. So this is the infrastructure that industries are facing. We need to work with government. This is for Korea mobility, for liquid hydrogen investment. So this is going to be soon be on stream. Amazing liquid hydrogen for the space industry, but now even for mobility. We are implementing. We are already commercialize all this different technology for mobility, right? The Singapore is interesting. We are trying to make the hydrogen blue, try to capture CO2. Hopefully, in the future, this CO2 can be transported from the cross-border to enable low carbon hydrogen business, make economic more cleaner. Finally, this last page, after all, actually, this is just a few of the points we're highlighting. Actually, recently we're doing the Australian project, 250 megawatts on the FEED stage now. Actually, the industry, we believe that we have come to a more and more realism. And a few key topics, I think the next phase, the next few minutes, we are more than happy to discuss about it. You know, policy, technology, cost, standards, all these key elements industry are facing, are addressing together with multiple global international organizations. This is essential. Otherwise, this low carbon hydrogen will not be easily be commercialized. So this is my last page. Thank you.
Thank you, Wen-bian. Good comprehensive list of projects there. And before I delve into each of those and ask questions, or before I ask Robert to say a few words in what might pull all of that together, perhaps I could ask Colin Tam of the IPPF to just give a few words. And while Colin takes the stand, I will encourage all those online to use the Q&A function and ask any questions that you have. And I will direct those to the panelists in due course. Colin.
Thank you, Thomas, and a good morning to everyone on site here, as well as those audience that are online. I'm the chairman of IPPF and have been for the last 20 years or so, since 2001, where IPP were formed by 4 international independent power company back in those days. I'm also the current chairman and a founding member of HASCO, as well as the one responsible for putting the hydrogen alliances in Hong Kong together last month. And so hydrogen is close and dear to my heart, and IPPF have been working on, and thank you to Thomas Briault, who head up the IPPF Hydrogen Committee. We have been holding monthly meetings on hydrogen way back, several years back, when the subject is not even in the public eyes and the public horizon. So thank you, Thomas, for all this consistent work. And I'd like to, on behalf of IPPF, thank you for the committee members that make today's event possible, and also want to thank Arup for making this beautiful facility and coordinating and be the sponsor of today's event. I believe, Thomas, you want me to also introduce the Robert, our next guest, or you want to go do that?
Please do, Colin. You've known Robert for many years.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to introduce the next speaker, Robert W.G. He's the founder and the president of G Strategy Group, LLC, a Washington, D.C.-based consulting firm providing policy analysis, advocacy, and litigation support for U.S. and foreign investors, as well as for foreign governments, trade association, utilities, and independent power company, as well as the public institutions, among others. Robert is a well-known figure in the U.S. Energy space. He's a recipient of various honors and awards, including he testified in front of the United States Congress and have been interviewed by Reuters, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, National Journal, BBC, and CNBC, among others. And his editorial also have been appear in the LA Times, the Dallas Morning News, and the Houston Chronicles. He served as Vice President for Development and Partner Relationship for the Electricity Innovation Institute, which is an affiliate of EPRIC, the Electric Power Research Institute in the United States, where he advocates the development of the smart grid to digitize the electric utility power delivering systems in the US. He is well qualified to do that because from 1997 to 2000, he served as the Assistant Secretary for Policy and International Affairs, and also as Assistant Secretary for Fossil Fuel Energy in the United States Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. He also chaired the Energy Department's Central Asia and Caspian energy strategies and was responsible for the timely completion of the department's 1998 Comprehensive National Energy Strategy. He also oversees the operation of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and the National Research Program to develop and demonstrate the advanced clean coal, natural gas, and petroleum technologies. From 1991 to 1997, he also served as a Public Utility Commissioner in the Commission of Texas, and also as its chairman in 1991 through 1995. And so he is a well-known regulator in the public utility sector as well. He also served as on the Committee on Electricity for National Association of Regulatory Utility Commission. Robert is a member of the Committee of 100, Chinese American, and he also served as a trustee of the St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, and as member of the Dallas Regional Panel of the President's Commission on White House Fellowships. Bob received his bachelor's degree with honor from the University of Texas, and also a law degree from the University of Texas School of Law. With that, I yield the time back to Thomas.
Thank you, Colin. Over to you, Robert.
I want to thank my good friend Colin Tam for his gracious and exceedingly long introduction of me. It's so long that I think it may be longer than my presentation, but we shall see. Let me do this. I will try to boot up my my slides. Can you see them, Thomas?
Yep.
Oh, they showed up on the screen. Very good. I'm going to be very brief. My remarks today will focus primarily on the role of government in providing additional drivers and incentives for private sector investment to accelerate the commercialization of hydrogen here in the United States. And for those of you who do follow what's going on in the United States, you will know that some of these drivers were enacted quite recently over the last 2 years in two principal pieces of legislation. It was what we call the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, some call it the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BIL, and the other one was the Inflation Reduction Act. The IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that policy was reflected in money that was authorized to provide for grants for that would be matched by the private sector. The most significant of which were the creation of what the bill called for, termed regional hydrogen hubs. The legislation said there should be at least 7 of these hubs throughout the country. The United States Department of Energy put out a solicitation, took some competitive bids, and chose those hubs last October. In totality, there was about $8 billion that's been authorized, 7 of which are going to the hubs. $1 billion has been kept for the purpose of trying to determine how best to accelerate the demand component of the hydrogen economy. And that grant was also recently announced, literally just a few weeks ago. My remarks are going to center on the grant that was given to the hub based in the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast. Wen-bian mentioned, you saw a map he put up. I'm going to show you a similar map. The project there was called the High Velocity Hydrogen Hub. It's now called the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub, and that hub is one of the two largest grant recipients by the Department of Energy. They're about $1.2 billion over a 10-year period. The only comparable one, I believe, is a hub awardee in California. The Inflation Reduction Act component you can see on this screen on the right-hand side, $13 billion, principally for production tax credits for clean hydrogen. And then you can see below that, there's also a PTC for CCS, what's known as the ever popular 45Q, where there's about $3.2 billion that's been authorized. You can see that the bulk of the actual tax credits go to the renewable power sector on the far right, and that's $51 billion. Let me turn to a little bit more elaboration about the production tax credit portion of the hydrogen, the IRA's provisions on hydrogen. As you can see, it's broken down into different categories, and you can. I didn't make the slide. The slides are actually the courtesy of the Center for Houston Future, but appropriately they classified each category of tax credit by green and blue, and you can see that the green hydrogen tax credits are significantly larger than the blue, intentionally so, obviously, because this administration, the Biden administration, is trying to get a great deal more renewable energy deployed and commercialized and applied for as a feedstock for the production of hydrogen. There is some tension, I should point out, in terms of the availability of the tax credit for blue hydrogen, and that's because the U.S. Treasury Department is currently considering the final regulations to implement these provisions of the IRA, and it's being very heavily lobbied by the environmental community. Some, but not all, of the members of the environmental community dislike or strongly disfavor the tax credit treatments to manufacture blue hydrogen. And so there's an ongoing debate right now about the scope and availability of that tax credit, notwithstanding the fact that it is made available under law. This is a graphic that I took from the Department of Energy website, and all it's really just sort of almost a cartoon-like representation of what the Department of Energy views as the model hydrogen hub. And you can see by the representational components that there's a production side, there is a demand side. In this instance, it's being used primarily for transportation. You can see off to the right, looks like there's a tanker. That's actually probably for export. And then in between, there are community benefits that abound. There's workforce development, STEM education community. Transportation, I see, there's some buses down at the bottom. One thing you'll notice is missing. You'll see that there's renewable energy feedstocks off to the left with windmills. And you'll see off in the far horizon, there's a nuclear power plant. But you don't see any pipelines bringing in natural gas. I thought that was probably intentional, probably the ideological bias of the illustration maker was showing. But nonetheless, as I mentioned, under the legislation enacted by Congress, there is available tax credits for blue hydrogen as well, notwithstanding what that illustrator said. This map looks very similar to the map that Wen-bian showed you on behalf of Linde. This indicates the elaborate pipeline network that is already in place for the transportation of hydrogen. An important question that's going to need to be resolved, however, is how do you regulate the transportation of hydrogen, even by pipeline? Because right now, as I understand it, this pipeline network, it does not enjoy is probably not the correct word, is not overseen by a regulatory process. The federal government doesn't regulate it, the state government doesn't regulate it. That's going to have to be ironed out if you think that the hydrogen economy is going to grow to any significant degree. This is an illustration of the volume of available, of anticipated rather, investment across hydrogen and in carbon capture technologies. And you can see it's broken down by region, with the Texas and Gulf Coast being the largest. It's obvious why the Gulf Coast hydrogen area, Gulf Coast was chosen as one of the 7 hydrogen hubs. the amount of blue hydrogen and green hydrogen that would be produced dwarfs the amount you see in the rest of the United States, as well as the degree of carbon that can be captured. And I would say, importantly, in Texas, Texas does have a really robust renewable energy industry. It leads the country in the production of wind energy. It's growing its solar energy production. In fact, solar is outpacing in terms of market share the volume of electricity currently being produced by any other competing technology. And the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Project intends to use a lot of that renewable energy produced electricity for the manufacture of hydrogen, in addition to the traditional natural gas feedstock. So it is a combined blue-green hydrogen production project. These are some of the announced clean hydrogen projects across Texas and Louisiana. I think Wen-bian mentioned Linde had some CCS activity. I can see that in the middle right there, right around the border of Texas and Louisiana. This is an indication of the potential of the Gulf Coast region to play a major role in the manufacture of hydrogen, both green as well as blue hydrogen. This graphic is simply an illustration of end-to-end production of hydrogen and consumption. You're probably very familiar with it by now. It's intended to show in a single chart exactly where the inputs are and where the offtakes are. Here are some of the envisioned projects of, as I mentioned, high velocity. Now the Gulf Coast Hydrogen Hub anticipates engaging in with federal monies, and you can see they're situated all around, primarily in Texas, but some in Louisiana, and it's going to be a combination of sources of energy, such as solar farms, wind farms. It's going to have a CO2 storage cavern. It'll have hydrogen fueling stations. It'll be used for transportation, as well as industrial processes and petrochemical refining, where it's primarily used today. Here's a little bit more detail about high velocity. These are the 7 project sponsors. The hub organizers are 3: GTI Energy. For those of you in the gas industry who deal with the United States, you're probably very familiar with them. Center for Houston's Future, which is an organization founded by the Greater Houston Partnership and also the University of Texas at Austin. And it has incorporated the major research centers that deal with energy, both in the Houston area as well as elsewhere, including Houston Area Research Center, EPRI, which is based in California, that I used to work for, NETL, National Energy Technology Lab for the U.S. Department of Energy, NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, based in Colorado, Port of Houston, and Upscale Houston. That's all I have for today. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. And thanks again to all of our panelists for some excellent opening remarks. I would encourage everyone online, please do ask your questions. I've started to see some of those come in. And I have a good number myself. Perhaps I'll go first to our questions that we've received online. John Pemberton asks, question for Adam, wondering what the cost of carbon is required to make these fuels economic.
Yes, so I suppose that gets back to the market. So we're trying to sell a product into kind of an unestablished market. So we think to be competitive with fossil, the green premium, if you will, that we can. Right now, we're targeting for our biomass project, for example, the one I'm working on in Tasmania. We're modeling about $100 to $150 US per ton, bone-dried ton of biomass, and there's roughly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think there's roughly about half of that would be carbon content in the woody mass. And that project's a gasification project, so we'll get syngas out of the gasifier and combined with hydrogen from the electrolyzers. And that input price is giving us what we think is a price at the back end for offtake that is competitive if you factor in what we think the market is willing to pay in terms of a green premium for that product. And given it's a drop-in fuel, and we're talking for our projects, we're talking about relatively quite small volumes to the total fuel demand in the market. It barely moves the needle on the end price that the user pays. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, I think so. Thank you. And maybe I might actually put that question to others. Perhaps, Joko, I could ask you first. What do you see as the price of needed essentially to be achieved in order to overcome that cost premium that green hydrogen comes to? Are people paying a green hydrogen a premium, do you think?
Well, I think at the beginning, as I also have explained in my presentation, is that first government should start with investing on that, and like the end users should be avoided from paying the whole cost at the beginning. And this is really necessary to start or to trigger the market, and we hope that by doing this, like more self-finance investor will come into the market, and the economy of scale will be developed. Thank you.
Yeah. And do you see that green premium being paid, David or Robert? Do you see, Robert, a green premium being paid for green hydrogen as a fuel? Are customers after that in the US, or are they hoping that the IRA just brings the price right down?
Yeah, if you're talking about project developers, I mean, right now, renewable energy already enjoys a production tax credit when it's being produced for benefit of the grid. There's an incentive for renewable energy developers to go ahead and build and generate, particularly if you're trying to get a wind project online. So that subsidized cost has already been internalized in their economic models. If you're talking about hydrogen production, the investment, the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA legislation that I mentioned, also contains an additional tax credit, okay, which would offset the economic barriers to production of green hydrogen. So, I'm not so sure it's a question of whether the public's willing to pay now. That decision's already been made. That train's left the station. That's already embodied in federal law. I guess what you're asking is, do they need more than that? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is that the tax credit's already there. Okay, it's there in two forms. It's there at the time the renewable energy is generated, and it's going to be there at the time they convert that to hydrogen.
Yes. I guess my question was, will the public pay a premium on their fuel when they get green hydrogen?
I don't know the answer to that. Quite honestly, it's so speculative. A lot of variables go into play when customers decide what type of automobile they purchase, whether it's an EV right now versus a internal combustion engine automobile. So if you're asking me whether they're going to be willing to pay a premium for hydrogen for a hydrogen fueled car, I really couldn't answer that, quite honestly. I do know in some limited instances, customers are willing to pay more for green power on the grid. There are tariffs that some utilities do offer, which allow customers to opt in for higher prices for power. So if that's any indicator of a potential market for selling hydrogen at a premium that customers are willing to pay once it's converted into a fuel, okay, you might be able to use that as a reference point.
Yeah, and I guess that comes to the question of how much does your incentive, and in the case of the US, the IRA, need to cover? Does it need to cover that entire difference between your alternative fuel, let's say gas at the pump, and the cost of generation of green hydrogen, or is there some premium there? And I guess that varies country to country and population by population. Wen-bian, what are you seeing in terms of not individual customers then, but in terms of, you know, larger industrial customers? Are they willing to pay that green premium?
Yeah, I think that this is $1 million question, because at this moment, due to the lack of standards, certification, and all these are yet under development. So if asked the industries, are they willing to pay? Yes. How much? Nobody knows. Right? Simply because this low carbon hydrogen, particularly green, is so expensive compared to fossil fuel based. Even blue is more than double, some even triple or 4 times. So the gap is huge. I'll just give example. People keep talking about the green ammonia. Green ammonia, the most competitive price today is going to be between $700 or $800 per ton of ammonia. Okay. So people say, okay, yes, this is a green ammonia with almost zero the carbon footprint. Then people say, okay, who is going to buy it? Today's market is gray ammonia. I'm not talking about Europe. I'm talking about Middle East or other locations where you have more competitive natural gas prices. So gray ammonium today, less than half. So the delta of $300 or $400 per ton of the green ammonia, given that size, typical ammonia, which cannot be too small, say 500,000 tons per year of ammonia capacity. In order to enable a project to be economical, typically 15 years, 20 years, one single project, the delta cost is going to be close to $2 billion. You can imagine that the delta simply is so huge. So, I mean, yes, a lot of industry, they're willing to do the pilot project because they have emission. They want to decarbonize. But commercial scale, say, just do day in, day out, they need to manage their P&L, right, with such a high cost. They're not really there yet. That this reason, exactly the reason why the government and the public are doing, where there is carrots, where there is sticks. Like, for example, I believe that Europe mainly is carrots. And Europe, a lot of sticks, also carrots. And we see even some in industries, even India, that talk about mandate, even though operating details is not coming out yet. But these are sticks. Carbon tax is another stick, for example. So we need these instruments from the government, from public, in order to initiate, to facilitate this kind of investments. So if you look at all the projects, what I shared from Linde perspective, some are small, 20 megawatts, 50 megawatts, and this cost is high. Each and every project has been supported by the government, including Singapore, right? So now you are saying that for commercial projects to fly at this moment, to stand on its own, it is impossible. Unless this kind of sticks carriers enable the receiving end, off-taking side, they have no choice. And everybody's on the same level playing field in the competitive perspective, then they have to do it. So therefore, the really cost is one thing because too huge, need some journey to go through. But key role is mainly by the government, by policy, by mandates, by all these kind of different instruments to make it work.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, you know, that's the key challenge here, isn't it? Is to work out how much government have to pay. You know, we all as citizens essentially outsource our decarbonisation problem to governments, and the question is, how much does the government need to cover, and how much will that green premium be? And I guess the projects that you have seen get over the line are the ones where it's got a little bit of both. Certainly the ones that Robert was describing in the US obviously are benefiting hugely from the IRA. I guess that moves us nicely on to the next question that I have, which is, Robert, if the Trump administration, if we change administration, this comes from John Pemberton again, if Trump is re-elected, do you think the IRA and the incentives that are pushing green hydrogen stateside, do you think they will be undone?
I think that even if Trump were president, it would depend on two other things. One is the constitution of the Congress. Bear in mind that the hydrogen provisions of the IIJA were enacted on a bipartisan basis. That if you look to where the money is being directed, a lot of that is being directed to Republican-led states. So it would take an enormous amount of political effort to get Congress to change to a significant degree the current provisions of that legislation. However, a president does have control over who is appointed Treasury Secretary and who is going to be heading the IRAs to the Internal Revenue Service to a certain extent, although that's not a frequent appointment. The Treasury Secretary could direct that there be a stricter interpretation of the availability of some of these tax credits if they so chose to amend the regulations that implemented them. Again, they would have legal problems, but it doesn't say that they might not try. But I don't see simply a wholesale cleaning of the table of these provisions if Trump were elected president. I think it would take a lot more than that.
Yeah, interesting. And Adam or perhaps Joko, do you see any differences in investment strategies depending on country? Are there some that you feel like those incentives will be more stable for your first investments, Adam?
Yeah, certainly the IRA was a game changer for HIF. We initially had our phase one project in Chile as our leading project. And then when the IRA was passed, I think that brought our end product, which at the time was gasoline, on par or close to par, based on our modeling at that time with fossil. So that's how much the IRA moved the needle. We've since modified that project to e-methanol. We just cut the back end off the plant, and we're working towards an e-methanol plant. And we continue. I tend to agree with Robert. I think it would take a lot to wipe the table clean of the provisions of the IRA. So we're working as if nothing will change. We believe that ultimately the IRA has a lot of benefits, economic benefits for the U.S., and I think that will come through in some of the electorates.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Thank Joko. Are there some specific countries that you're seeing where those incentives seem to be much stronger and investment in hydrogen is more attractive?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the ASEAN countries. Is that the things that in ASEAN countries, the challenge of advancing the use of renewable-based electricity is still quite huge. So if we can produce like electricity from solar or wind, then I mean, supposedly it should be used directly to feed the grid with its produced electricity, and instead of using that to make hydrogen, so that in ASEAN countries, like the incentives or the investments should be directed toward the use of surplus electricities or electricity that is produced in the remote area where demand is not there, such as geothermal or such as regions with high solar power potential, but very low demand from the households. But that is one thing. But the other thing is that also ASEAN countries has still some potential in producing locally oil and gas. And I guess in this regard, government would like to go smoothly from the currently gray hydrogen through a blue hydrogen by using CCS and CCUS. And I see that PTT, Petronas, and Pertamina are cooperating with Exxon or BP to build CCS. And And I see that the pathway of ASEAN countries will be passing through this CCS first, like a blue hydrogen from a steam reformer, because of course, like Thailand, Indonesia, Brunei, we are still producing gas, and I guess it will take some time before the really low carbon or green hydrogen from renewable electricity will be there.
Yeah, and I guess so. ASEAN countries are really looking in terms of demand at the moment only really to be Singapore in the short term. Okay, perhaps I can now go to the floor. Are there any questions in Hong Kong? I think that we have a roving mic.
Yes. Maybe I'll do this so the people online can see me. My name's Sarah Fairhurst. I sit on the board of a company, and we've been trying to invest in a fuel cell, a hydrogen fuel cell in South Korea. And one of the barriers we've come across is that some of our investors are refusing to invest in that hydrogen fuel cell because for the first couple of years, it's going to be fueled by brown or gray or anyway, not green hydrogen. And I think, I think actually Robert touched on it with his US information, that there are people out there who are refusing to invest in anything other than pure green hydrogen projects because they want to jump from now straight into the green hydrogen economy. But I see that as an issue because we need to build the infrastructure and to build up the demand, and sometimes we need gray or blue hydrogen to get that. And I wondered what your panelists' views were on that and how we can overcome these issues and help educate people that we do actually need to build the infrastructure up to get hydrogen off the ground.
Perhaps I'll come to that in the order of speakers. Pak Joko, any thoughts?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, like, at the end, it really depends on how the cost components are really playing a role, like how much will be the cost of renewable-based electricity and the electrolyzers itself. And at the end, because it's the full integrated system that we look at. I mean, like to produce green hydrogen, then we need to consider the other. I mean, like the end user cost of fuel cell. Then at the end will be add up to those cost components. So I think it's quite logical to see this kind of trend, and like the case of Korea, that it is very hard to find some investor in that sense. But I guess we need to collect data and to have like pilot project to really be able to understand how the whole system works, including the cost and financial. And I guess even if in this case we still need to have some, I mean, like some pilot projects using fuel cells in many regions, including Korea or including ASEAN as well.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the question, Sarah. I'm sure it'll be controversial. Any thoughts, Adam, on whether we should go grey or brown first?
For our cases, our project cases specifically, I'm just trying to think. We CO2 comes to mind as a challenge. Because we're in the e-fuels business, we need CO2 to combine with hydrogen to make our product. CO2 is everywhere, but it's surprisingly difficult and expensive to get it where we need it, in the volumes we need it. So we, for example, are investing in direct air capture research, and we're going to install a couple of pilot direct air capture projects at our Haro-Oni facility in Chile. Another area of, I guess, going back to Wen-bian's comment as well, the CapEx, all of the CapEx drivers for these projects, we expect them to come down over time as projects get off the ground. But it's chicken and egg problem. We need scale in order to get the pricing to come down. But in order to get the projects off the ground to reach scale, we need the government to give us the carrots and the sticks to motivate developers like HIF to invest in what are effectively projects that cost double what an equivalent fossil project would cost. And my background is in oil and gas, so I can vouch for those numbers. You're spot on. They're typically around double the cost of to get an equivalent fossil fuel to market from upstream, midstream to downstream. Yeah, so that's kind of a roundabout answer, but infrastructure is it's definitely a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have been producing grey hydrogen for many years and grey ammonia for many years, and so the question is, to what extent do we want to continue to do that? And should we badge those projects as anything other than business as usual? And things like the IRA then are targeted at just the green projects. Let me come on to a few other questions that I have. Perhaps one for you, Wen-bian. We have one here. Besides green hydrogen and ammonia, this is a question from Stephen Qian. Are there any updates on the development of e-methanol in Singapore? A lot of shippers prefer to use e-methanol as a fuel, I guess, as opposed to ammonia.
Yeah, I'm based in Singapore. Of course, I feel the importance for the bunker fuel, right? Currently, the bunker fuel in Singapore around this region is the biggest market, almost 40 million or 50 million tons per year, right? So obviously, the industry is looking at the bunker fuel market, particularly the two derivatives, which one is ammonia, one is methanol. Methanol, absolutely, because this for the industries, they're familiar with that, even for ships. The technology is there. Of course, it's not like any other project, which is for specific use, but this technology, storage, transport, everything there, right? Even the engine is not big deal. I think, of course, something to be perfect in the future. The question about Singapore is that Singapore, I mean, not to produce e-methanol, you need to have two components. One is hydrogen, one is low carbon hydrogen, one is CO2. CO2 has to be clean. I mean, currently the CO2 for industry sources, I don't think that's been defined from certified to be clean. Another one is with hydrogen. Where do we get the low carbon hydrogen? Singapore already been big challenge to even deal with the existing carbon, existing clean hydrogen, right? So for me to produce e-methanol Singapore, I'm not sure is that feasible, honest. I mean, if they might also more to import rather than from domestic that produce it, simply because hydrogen sources, CO2 sources, right? And also, of course, you talk about the bunker fuel on the ships is huge in terms of magnitude. Even you manage to get some tonnage of clean CO2, low carbon CO2, hydrogen, where is that? And in Singapore, there's no land for renewable. So where do we have clean hydrogen? Okay, the blue hydrogen, CO2, need to deal with CO2. That's another challenge, right? So I would believe that bunker fuel is really for Singapore. One is imported. One is that, of course, imported in methanol. Another thing is low carbon ammonia. But of course, ammonia as a bunker fuel, really about for ships, the technology yet to be matured in terms of NOx emission, in terms of engine, a lot of other issues. That's why, as a Singapore, the government is initiating this inquiry to the market. So the process is ongoing to support the initial pilot. The initial pilot is for two applications with one single project, one single shot. One is for the power, 50 megawatts for the power, ammonia direct firing for power. Another thing is that ammonia for bunker fuel, right? So I'm not too much in Singapore, particularly for that location. I'm not a big fan of the e-methanol for local produced this e-methanol, but e-methanol for bunker fuel, absolutely. It is essential for me as an energy transition.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and you know, having recently left Singapore and done some work for the government there, they seem quite keen for not to miss the boat, pardon the pun, on bunkering fuels and making sure that they're right at the edge of that market. Okay, next question I have from Qian for Robert. Just as CCS has a carbon credit associated with it, is there a policy change possible for oxygen that could be released from electrolysis? Obviously, you split water, get the hydrogen out and use that how you see fit. Is there a way in which kind of that zero carbon oxygen could get a negative carbon credit for additional revenue for developers, do you think?
I think the whole idea is fascinating. I've never heard that suggestion, so so I don't know. Maybe I'm not traveling in the same circles, but the idea that you would get an equivalent credit for the release of oxygen, as I guess that's viewed as negative. It's a negative offset to carbon. So I think it's an intriguing idea, but I've not heard anybody float that within the tax community. I'm not a tax practitioner, but I follow energy policy. I've not heard that. That's a novel thought.
Any thoughts on that, Wen-bian?
Yes, I think that actually this is really our area, our company's area, because we are dealing with industry gases, oxygen, nitrogen for industry applications. Amazingly, it really depends on location, to be honest. Yes, if really oxygen can be fully utilized, it really can provide, we did some ballpark number, $0.50 or $1 per kg hydrogen. I mean, it's quite significant. The challenge is really about, you need to capture it, there's a cost, and also cannot be too far away, right? So therefore, but you will see, like for Singapore one, the oxygen has been captured for industry use, but it's a smaller scale. But for now, we're talking about a very big magnitude. So there's a huge amount of oxygen being going to be generated. So you will see it amazingly that is happening in China, because when the China, particularly in the north and south, in the north or west, a lot of coal gasification projects, they convert coal to coal chemical to chemical. They need a huge amount of oxygen, right? So therefore, with renewable power in the same location, typically also in the north, in the west, right? So generate power, you generate green hydrogen, you convert to ammonia or any other derivatives, and also oxygen can be diverted for the coal gasification process. And coal gasification needs a huge amount of oxygen, right? So of course, this is some kind of economics need to be calculated not to make it happen. But for me, it's really just a squander of the energy. If oxygen is simply just released to the air, the key challenge is about location, whether this can be utilized. Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess, you know, co-locating green hydrogen and blue hydrogen production is also an interesting question, because green hydrogen is the splitting of water into oxygen and hydrogen. You then have a lot of oxygen, which you actually need for some processes to produce blue hydrogen. And so lots of plants are looking at direct air capture to get that oxygen, but obviously it'd be far more efficient to take it from that solution. So lots of potential innovation in there. Thank you for that question, Qian. So I've got a question here from Qian Kisela for Joko. It's clear that projects in the in the US and EU are going ahead based on subsidies and mandates which cost money. Are ASEAN countries ready to, in Jan's words, open their wallets and walk the talk in supporting hydrogen? And without such support, it's hard to expect projects to go ahead. Do you think they're ready for that yet?
Oh, well, I mean, like the level of readiness differ from country to country. I mean, we see Singapore in one very extreme side of the kind of panorama. But the thing is that there is one willingness of like the leading ASEAN countries like Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia to get really involved in the development of a hydrogen economy. And the other thing is that there is this climate and also environmental exigence that is getting more and more demanding for the industries and all sectors. And I guess at some point this will influence the competitiveness of those industries. I mean, in ASEAN now the talk is about the CBAM, and that is apart from that about standardization. And if our commodities would like to be to remain competitive in the world, like our chemical industry or methanol or fertilizer and also steel, then ASEAN industry need to comply with the standards and need to comply with the climate requirement. And I guess when there is this kind of pressures and the government can find a way to finance and to stimulate the market, then I think we are getting there also as well, this industry. But still, this will take time because, for example, ASEAN need to formulate its carbon pricing, its financial mechanism to support the green industry. But I guess ASEAN will not be lag behind in this kind of development. They would like to be there as well. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting how the rest of the world might follow those early adopters. I want to go back to the floor in Hong Kong. Do we have any more questions live? Thank you for yours earlier, Sarah. It's good to see you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jason. I'm from the Hong Kong IE Gas Energy Divisions. This is a very informative webinar. Thanks for the organizing about this. Some questions I normally hear from the layman, from people in the street or my friends. They are not expert in hydrogen or gas. They will ask me a question, why we introduce hydrogen, although we already have an electrical car, a battery seems quite popular. As an expert, actually, I know that the future will be hydrogen because this is absolutely environmental friendly, right? You combust hydrogen, become water, water go back to hydrogen. So this is a really sustainable way. But how long do you think we can convince people and the technology will sufficiently reduce the cost of hydrogen to make it become the main fuel, say before 2050, because that's a goal that many countries think about to be carbon zero. So maybe expert can give me some insight, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll put that question to Adam in a moment. I mean, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And hydrogen and its applicability varies widely from country to country and situation to situation. It's not a silver bullet for anything. But Adam, when are you predicting kind of general uptake?
Yeah, so I guess the first comment I would make is HIF or HIF. Our entire business model is based on the fact that there are over 1 billion internal combustion engines on the road around the planet, and that many of those, or a good portion of those engines, are in countries that are far away from population centers. There are long distances between population centers, and they won't very quickly convert to EV or alternative means because there's quite an investment and timeline, a long timeline in order for that to happen. So we think for that reason there will be a large addressable market for e-fuels, hydrogen-based e-fuels. Certainly EV, there will be a large portion of transportation that will be EV based or even e-methanol based for shipping. But again, there are hard to abate sectors in transportation that we think will depend on non-hydrogen based or hydrogen based fuels, but not hydrogen combustion. Hydrogen is hard to store, it's hard to transport. The technology will eventually get there, I think, but it'll take a while.
Yeah. Yes, and I guess it does vary country by country. We have lots more questions left. I'm going to try and wrap this up with some and ask you for some very quick answers to the next few questions that we have, if I dare, panelists. So, question for Adam: are the wind turbines, from Robert Bloom, are the wind turbines dedicated to hydrogen production rather than connected to the grid in your projects?
Our off-grid projects, yes. And for our own grid projects, we're working with renewable power generators to get power purchase agreements in place, and then firming to underpin the renewable energy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Another question from Robert, and I'm not quite sure whether this is best put to Robert or to Wen-bian. The hydrogen pipelines that you showed, I'm guessing in the Gulf of Mexico, are they for pure hydrogen, or is there a blend, given that pure hydrogen can leak from some types of pipeline?
Yeah, I can answer
Let
this
me address.
question.
Yeah,
I'm
let
sorry.
me let Wen-bian, and then I'll give a legal answer. But go ahead, Wen-bian. You first. You're on the ground.
Thanks, Robert. Actually, that just give a clear answer. Actually, this all the pipelines, at least what the Linde is operating over there is pure hydrogen. Of course, pure hydrogen means that more than 99.99%, 99.9%. But of course, depend on downstream application. You would need for electronics market even more pure. For industry application, you need to have a further processing to be the 5 nines, for example. Yeah, this is from technical term. Robert, come back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Currently, we have again natural gas pipelines that do have a hydrogen blend in them. Those pipelines are regulated, okay, because they're regulated for natural gas. Pure hydrogen pipelines don't have that same type of regulation. The only type of regulation in the United States that they have to work under are ones that are geared primarily towards safety and use of hazardous material. So there's no economic regulatory or open access regulation of those pipelines that like you would have for natural gas pipelines. And at the state level, there's no regulation at all of distribution or production of hydrogen.
Thank you both for that.
Thomas, I still have 2 questions in the room, if I may, and we also have to fold within 5 minutes here because we need a bit of networking time, if that is allowed.
Sure, go.
Hi, Jan Kisala here from HSBC project financing team. I have a question to Robert. I was wondering about the IRA. Initially, when it was announced in 2022, it has caused a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of project developers have focused their attention on projects in the US. But yet here we are almost 2 years after the announcement, and the enthusiasm is a bit disappearing, or the clarification are taking so much time. So what's your take? Why is it taking so much time? Why can't they move quicker? Any take from your end?
If you know the answer to that, I will give you $1 million. I think the problem is, as you probably can guess, it's the Treasury Department regulations that would specify the terms and conditions for qualification of those tax credits. And Treasury has taken an inordinately long period of time. I don't know what the reason is. I think it probably has to do with the fact that they need adequate staffing. Some of the questions they're dealing with are exceedingly technical, from what I understand. And then there's also the effect of politics that pulls them in different directions. Even within the White House, there is an enormous amount of debate over how to fashion and shape these regulations to to see whether they're going to be narrowly prescribed or more widely prescribed. So the rulemaking process is where the bottleneck is, and that's what's taking such a long period of time.
Thank you, Robert. Have you got one more
Thomas?
there, Nick?
Thomas, one last question, and we have to fall down here.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Eva Hong from Sustainable Finance Standard Chartered Bank. I have a quick one. One is, I think, from government initiative partnership. Recently, we see a lot like press from the JETB, Just Energy Transition Partnership, from the government perspective in the ASEAN region. So just want to ask the panelists, do you see any real sort of policy or initiative unfolding from that? And the second one is our bank has been leading a lot of effort trying to have a unified standards for voluntary carbon market, although traditionally that's more for the projects for carbon avoid emission and taken out from the emission. But recently understand Singapore MAS has been working, the what we call pilot transition carbon credit for under the traction program. So just wondering, how do you see that potentially can be another funding channel from the private market, in addition to the compliance carbon market? Thank you.
Has anyone got any comments on the carbon markets from the panelists?
May I comment one thing about JETB? Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, like Indonesia is the receiver of JETB currently, and we get like 20 billion USD as kind of a starting of funding to trigger the market to get the coal power plants early retired. So, but the thing is that it's still in the discussion and how to create the bankable projects on repurposing those power plants that in average are very young, quite 10 to 12 years. And one of the things is not to get them retired earlier, but also to repurposing. But I guess I don't know exactly what happened in the discussion and how what kind of elements are being discussed. But yeah, I mean, like the use of coal can be repurposed on many things, not only with the co-firing, but also perhaps to use them to produce brown hydrogen. But this is only that I'm thinking out loud. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Joko. I think we've now reached our time. Apologies to all of those. I have run over slightly. I would like to thank all of our panelists again. Thank you to Pak Joko for your and to ERIA. Thank you to Adam, Alderman, and to HIF. Thank you to Wen-bian of Linde, and thank you to Robert G. Thanks also to IPPF for hosting and supporting the Hydrogen Committee. For anyone who would like to join that committee, please do get in touch directly with the Directorate. And finally, thank you to Arup for hosting the event in Hong Kong. We'll now close the online event, and I wish you a good networking event afterwards. Thanks all.
The Independent Power Producers Forum is an international NGO comprised of senior executives and decision makers heading up firms with energy and power business commitment across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas. We cover all key areas and sectors relating to power generation. If you are interested to expand your industry presence worldwide, corporate memberships are available. For more information on the benefits of IPPF membership, please contact the IPPF Secretariat or any of our IPPF officers.